Have you ever taken a bite of something so familiar only to realize it's a complete lie? Imagine building a legacy on a single recipe, a slice of apple pie that made your family's name famous, only to discover it's been replaced with a cheap, dangerous fake right under your nose. That's exactly what happened to Jackson Hart, the billionaire CEO of Golden Hearth Bakery. Disguised as an ordinary customer, he walked into one of his own stores, tasted the truth, and uncovered a fraud so massive it spanned multiple states. Stick around, because this isn't just about pee, it's about betrayal, courage, and a fight for integrity. Hit that subscribe button and let's dig into a story that'll leave you hungry for justice. Jackson Hart adjusted the brim of his worn baseball cap as he stepped through the glass doors of Golden Hearth Bakery and Grill in Scranton, Pennsylvania. At 47, he was a man who'd built an empire from a single pie stand at county fairs into a national brand with over 600 locations. But today, he wasn't the billionaire CEO in a tailored suit with an entourage. He was just a guy in a plain button-down shirt and dark jeans, blending into the lunchtime crowd. No one gave him a second glance. Not the teenager scrolling on her phone behind the counter, not the customers munching on pastries, and certainly not the staff who barely noticed the fingerprints on the display case or the caramel streaks on the marble counters that should have been wiped clean hours ago. The faint smell of cinnamon and brown butter hung in the air, a nostalgic aroma that should have felt like home. After all, it was Jackson's mother's apple pie recipe that had put Golden Hearth on the map. 20 years ago, he'd stood beside her in a cramped kitchen, learning how to layer apple slices just right so the filling held its shape. "A good pie stands on its own," she'd say, her hands dusted with flour. "A dishonest one sinks under its lies." Those words echoed in his mind as he scanned the room. Something didn't sit right. The vibe was off, tired, unmotivated, like a store running on autopilot. Jackson had a reason to be here, and it wasn't nostalgia. For weeks, the Scranton location had been flashing yellow on his regional reports. Margins too high, costs too low, and yet no complaints, no red flags from the local team. It didn't add up. As the CEO, he could have sent a corporate team to investigate, but Jackson believed in seeing things for himself. So, with the help of his VP of Field Operations, Dana, he'd gone undercover. No suit, no badge, just a man with a gut feeling and a hunger for the truth. "Just a slice of classic apple pie," Jackson said casually, handing over a $10 bill to the cashier. She barely looked up, punched the keys with one hand, and shoved his change across the counter with the other. No smile, no eye contact, and definitely no "welcome to Golden Hearth," the greeting every employee was trained to give. Strike one, he thought, tucking the receipt into his pocket. He carried his tray to a corner booth near the window, where he could observe the floor and the kitchen pass through while blending in. His disguise had worked in 5 other cities. No one ever suspected the scruffy guy with 2-day stubble was the boss. When the girl called out number 42, Jackson stood and picked up his tray. The white ceramic plate held a neatly cut slice of apple pie, golden brown lattice top, a swirl of cinnamon glaze, and a scoop of vanilla bean ice cream on the side. On the surface, it looked like the pie he'd spent 2 decades perfecting, but the smell was off, subtle, but unmistakable to someone who knew the real thing. He sat down, slid his fork through the crust, and watched as the filling slumped outward. No texture, no sliced fruit, just a glossy, over-sweetened goop the color of canned syrup. Jackson frowned. The filling should have had layers warm apple slices with a bit of resistance, flecks of cinnamon, traces of nutmeg. This was mushy, artificial, almost gelatinous. He took a bite and his taste buds recoiled. The sweetness was sharp, chemical, with a metallic aftertaste that lingered unnaturally. It wasn't just off-brand, it was fraudulent. Jackson had tasted every batch of that pie since he was 27. He could have identified it blindfolded. This wasn't his product. He forced himself to chew, swallow, and set the fork down. Then, with steady fingers, he lifted the plate. Tucked partially under the napkin was a small printed label, likely meant for internal kitchen use. It read, "Product, apple pie, filling Liberty Orchard, imports." His eyes narrowed. Liberty Orchard wasn't on Golden Hearth's approved vendor list. The company had 2 nationwide suppliers for fruit fillings, both family farms using fresh-cut produce, not imported syrup. Every franchise owner knew this. It was in bold print in the training manual and outlined explicitly in the franchise agreement. Substitutions, especially unapproved bulk ingredients, weren't just a breach. They were grounds for immediate review. Jackson's phone buzzed. A text from Donna. "How's the pie?" He replied without hesitation. "Fake. Check everything we have on Liberty Orchard imports." 3 dots appeared, then her response. "That's not one of ours." His expression darkened. This wasn't a fluke or a lazy shortcut. This was calculated a decision to swap out the one product that defined the brand, hoping no one would notice. But he noticed. And if you're starting to notice something off in your own life, don't keep it to yourself. Have you ever eaten something familiar and instantly realized it wasn't right, but no one else seemed to care? Comment below if you'd stay quiet and assume it's nothing, or 2 if you'd speak up and demand answers. Your choice might reveal more than you think. Jackson took a deep breath, steadying his pulse as he slid the tampered slice back onto the plate. He tucked the Liberty Orchard slip into his pocket and scanned the dining room. The energy was hollow. Staff moved mechanically. Customers munched in silence. A digital menu board flickered overhead, stuck looping a promotional ad from last season. It was midday, but the vibe felt more like closing time. Behind the counter, a young worker struggled to refill the ice bin with one hand while texting with the other. No one seemed to notice or care that Jackson was watching, which, in a way, was exactly what he needed. His eyes drifted to the back of the store, past the prep area, to a frosted glass door labeled "Office Authorized Personnel Only." The person behind that door was the one he needed to meet, Karen Polson, franchisee, store manager, and a 10-year veteran of the Golden Hearth system. Jackson had read her file that morning. Consistent performance for 7 years, but in the past year, a noticeable shift, high profit, low ordering costs, and unusually quiet customer feedback. Too quiet. Something was hiding beneath the crust, and Jackson was determined to cut through to the truth. Last time we saw Jackson Hart, the billionaire CEO of Golden Hearth Bakery, go undercover and bite into a slice of apple pie that wasn't just bad, it was a betrayal. A fake filling, a shady supplier, and a store that's hiding something big. But what happens when the boss comes face to face with the manager who might be behind it all? Stick around, because the truth is about to spill out, and it's messier than any pie filling. If you haven't seen part 1, check it out now, and don't forget to like and subscribe for the full story. Jackson Hart sat back in the corner booth at Golden Hearth Bakery and Grill in Scranton, Pennsylvania. His eyes locked on the frosted glass door marked "Office Authorized Personnel Only." The half-eaten slice of apple pie sat on the plate before him, its artificial filling oozing like a secret that couldn't stay hidden. The label Liberty Orchard Imports burned in his mind, a name that didn't belong on his company's carefully vetted supplier list. This wasn't just a bad batch. It was a deliberate swap, and someone had to answer for it. He leaned back, turning on his phone's voice recorder, and dictated quietly, "Observed potential supplier substitution, low staff engagement, multiple service lapses. Scranton unit, 12:47 p.m. Every detail mattered. He wasn't just here to taste pie. He was here to uncover a lie that could taint the legacy his mother had entrusted to him. His phone buzzed again. Dana, his VP of Field Operations, texted, "Liberty Orchard was incorporated last year in Delaware. No prior food service history. Registered agent is Charles Polson." Jackson's jaw tightened. Charles Polsona, name that rang a bell. He typed back, "Any relation to Karen Polson?" The reply came swiftly. Her brother. "I'm pulling financials now." The pieces were starting to form a picture, and it wasn't a pretty one. Karen Polson, the store manager and franchisee, wasn't just a bystander in this. If her brother was tied to Liberty Orchard, this could be more than a rogue decision. It could be a family operation, a calculated fraud hidden behind Golden Hearth's trusted name. Jackson pocketed his phone and decided it was time to meet the woman behind the door, but he wasn't ready to reveal himself just yet. He needed more. He stood, disposed of his tray, and approached the pickup counter with a casual air. "Could I get the store phone number?" he asked the teenage cashier. She blinked, barely engaged. It's online," she mumbled, gesturing vaguely at the wall. Jackson smiled politely, pulled out his phone, and typed the digits he already knew. The landline rang inside the office. Through the narrow window in the frosted glass door, he saw a woman in her 40s, dressed in a Golden Hearth maroon cardigan, pick up the receiver with a curious frown. "This is Karen Polson," the voice said crisply. "How can I help you?" Jackson didn't bother disguising his tone. "Karen, this is Jackson Hart. I'm sitting in your restaurant. I'd like to speak with you now." There was a pause, just long enough for him to hear her inhale sharply. "Excuse me," she said, her voice tinged with confusion. "I'm at table 4 by the window. You've just served me a pie with a filling from Liberty Orchard Imports. I don't believe that's an approved supplier. Come join me." Through the window he saw her freeze, her eyes scanning the dining area. When they landed on him, recognition hit her face like a splash of ice water. Jackson raised a hand in a small wave, calm, precise, and in full control. "Of course, Mr. Hart," she said after a beat. "Right away." Jackson ended the call and returned to his booth, his stomach no longer turning from the fake pie but from the quiet, burning anger of a man who'd been lied to in his own house. He straightened the napkin beside the plate, set his phone face down in the center of the table, and waited. The filling had spilled out, and now so would the truth. Karen Polson emerged from the office with a smoothness that might have fooled anyone else. She was composed, professional, every strand of her blonde bob in place, her cardigan neatly buttoned. But Jackson had been in enough boardrooms to spot the tightness around her eyes, the practiced smile that didn't reach her cheeks. "Mr. Hart," she said as she approached the booth, her voice calm but her breath a little too controlled. "What a surprise! If we'd known." "You didn't," Jackson interrupted, gesturing to the empty seat across from him. "Sit." She obeyed, but not before glancing quickly toward the kitchen, where several employees had paused mid-motion, sensing something was off. One of them whispered to another, who glanced back at the booth before disappearing into the walk-in fridge. Jackson noted it all. He slid the plate of half-eaten pie toward her. "Go on, take a bite." Karen blinked, confused. "Sir, that pie. Take a bite. Tell me what you taste." She hesitated, then picked up the fork, cut a small piece, and chewed. She chewed too long. "Well?" Jackson asked. "It's a little sweeter than usual, maybe," she said carefully, "but our batches do vary slightly." "No, they don't," Jackson said flatly. "Not if they're made to spec. Not if they're made with the filling we've used since 2008. And certainly not if they're made from fresh-cut apples, which this isn't." Karen folded her hands tightly in her lap. "I can assure you, Mr. Hart, we maintain Golden Hearth standards in every aspect." He pulled the Liberty Orchard label from his pocket and placed it on the table between them. "Then explain this." Her eyes flicked down, froze, then slowly lifted back to meet his. "We've had some supply delays recently," she said, almost too quickly, "especially with inflation on produce. Liberty Orchard provided us with a short-term alternative at a competitive rate. Without authorization," Jackson cut in, "without informing corporate, and without updating the supplier database, which if I hadn't looked under that plate, you would've continued hiding." "Mr. Hart, I understand how this looks," Karen said, her tone shifting to something firmer, more defensive. "But we've been operating under extreme constraints, logistics issues, labor shortages. Everyone is adapting. I made the call to keep the store running and avoid waste." You made the call, Jackson echoed, to compromise our product, our brand, my family's name, and you didn't even have the decency to tell us. Karen straightened her spine. It was never about deceit. It was about survival. The cost of our original filling has gone up nearly 60% since last fall. If I had stuck to the manual, I'd be operating at a loss. And instead, you've been padding your profit margin, Jackson said, his voice cool and level. Because this isn't just about one location. I've already received a breakdown showing that your numbers didn't just survive, they improved. You're spending less, reporting more, and you've done it quietly enough that no one flagged it until now. Karen opened her mouth, then shut it again. Jackson leaned back and let the silence stretch. Every second made her more uncomfortable. Tell me, Karen, he said finally, how long have you been using Liberty Orchard products? 4 months, she admitted, her voice tight. And is it just the filling? She hesitated. A few other items. Brownie mix, canned cherries. We've kept it within reason. You've kept it in the dark, Jackson corrected. He picked up his phone and tapped the screen. The voice recorder was already running. He placed it face up on the table between them. We'll be testing the samples today. If you'd like to add any context, now's the time. Karen's posture stiffened. Her tone cooled. I believe he'll wait to speak with legal counsel. Jackson nodded slowly. That's your right. He gathered the plate and the Liberty Orchard slip, slipping both into a zippered pouch. The restaurant hummed behind them, but the air around the booth had gone still. You'll be hearing from us again soon, he said. In the meantime, I suggest you don't change a thing. Leave the records intact. Don't warn anyone. Karen said nothing. She only watched him as he stood, her jaw tight. Jackson turned to leave, but stopped after a few steps. And Karen, he said over his shoulder, if you've built your profits on lies, you'd better hope they don't crumble as fast as your pie filling. He walked out of the store into the cold Pennsylvania air, slipping his phone into his pocket and his thoughts into a warpath. But this wasn't the end. It was just the first slice. Back at his hotel suite, Jackson paced the length of the room, phone pressed to his ear. The manila pouch containing the pie slice and the printed label sat unopened on the coffee table, the last trace of trust he'd had in Karen Polson. On the other end of the line, Dana was deep into the investigation. We've got confirmation, she said. Liberty Orchard is a front. Paper trail leads to a holding company in Delaware, registered under an address linked to Polson's brother, Charles. No prior food licensing, no FDA filings. They incorporated 18 months ago. Jackson rubbed his forehead, which means they existed for exactly one purpose, to funnel product through the back door. There's more, Donna said. I spoke with compliance. That ingredient label you found? The code matches a rejected sample we tested last year. It had elevated sulfites and a thickener not approved for food use in the U.S. Jackson's hand froze midair. You're telling me Karen's been serving pie with a filling that wouldn't pass FDA inspection? Yes. And based on the invoice dates, she's been doing it for at least 4 months. Quietly, consistently. Jackson walked to the minibar, poured himself a glass of water, and stared at the amber-colored slice under plastic wrap on the table. It looked harmless, familiar even, but it wasn't what it claimed to be, and that made it dangerous. I want testing done, he said. Full spectrum composition, preservatives, anything outside spec. Pull the lab team off whatever they're working on and get them here. I've already called them, Dana replied. ETA is under an hour. True to her word, 45 minutes later, a knock came at the door. Jackson opened it to find Dr. Elena May, the lead food scientist from Golden Hearth's internal quality control team, rolling in a sleek black testing unit that looked like a medical-grade suitcase on wheels. She offered a curt nod. I assume this is urgent. Jackson handed her the pouch. It's not just a substandard substitute. We think it's a manufactured filler blend from an unauthorized supplier, possibly dangerous. Dr. May pulled on gloves and began laying out sterile slides, pipettes, and a portable spectrometer. She worked quickly, professionally, a woman used to identifying deception in grams and molecules. Jackson stood back, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the pie as she extracted a sliver of filling and placed it under the scanner. "What are we comparing it to?" she asked. "Recipe 3.7, Jackson replied. "The same one we've used for every national distribution since 2011. Real fruit, no synthetic thickeners, no high-density preservatives." Dr. May tapped the screen. Baseline loaded. They waited. The machine hummed, scans ran, data filled the screen in quiet, clinical increments. Finally, she turned the monitor toward Jackson. Two graphs appeared side by side, one for the original recipe, one for the sample. "You don't need a lab coat to see this," she said. "Protein ratios are off by 38%. Natural sugars are replaced almost entirely by corn-derived glucose. And the compound here," she tapped a glowing red flag, "is carboxymethylcellulose. It's banned in food service for children under 12. Jackson exhaled slowly. "Bottom line, this isn't food," Dr. May said. "It's chemistry molded to look like pie. And if this is what customers have been eating for months, you have a much bigger problem than just fraud." As she packed up her kit, Jackson returned to his phone. Dana had just sent another update, this one colder than the last. "We pulled merchant logs from Scranton and cross-referenced them with shipping records. Our authorized suppliers haven't made a single delivery to that store in 5 months. 5 months. That meant every bite, every slice served at this location had come from a black market operation masquerading as home-style goodness." Jackson sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. He thought of the customers' families, children, seniors, people who trusted the brand to mean what it said. Homemade quality, real ingredients, always. Instead, they'd been fed something else entirely. His phone buzzed again. "You need to see this," Dana texted. "We traced payments from Polson's store to Liberty Orchard's bank account. Guess who signs them?" Jackson didn't need to guess. He opened the attachment and saw the scanned signature. Karen Polson, neat and deliberate. Dozens of transactions, all structured just below the internal audit threshold. He picked up the pie box and looked at it one more time. Same box, same crust, same lattice pattern, but inside, a lie. And now he knew it didn't stop in Scranton. It was time to find out how deep it went. Last time, Jackson Hart, the undercover CEO of Golden Hearth Bakery, confronted store manager Karen Polson and discovered a dangerous truth. The apple pie that built his empire had been replaced with a toxic fake. Lab tests confirmed it, and the paper trail pointed straight to Karen and her brother. But this isn't just one store's betrayal. It's a web of lies stretching far beyond Scranton. Stick around to see Jackson uncover how deep this fraud goes and face threats he never saw coming. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, catch up now, and don't forget to like and subscribe for the full story. Jackson Hart sat on the edge of the hotel bed in Scranton, Pennsylvania, staring at the amber-colored slice of apple pie under plastic wrap. The lab results from Dr. Elena May still echoed in his mind. This isn't food. It's chemistry molded to look like pie. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. For 5 months, customers at this Golden Hearth location, families, kids, grandparents, had been fed a lie, a concoction laced with banned chemicals like carboxymethylcellulose, and the signature on the payments to Liberty Orchard Imports, the shady supplier behind it all, belonged to Karen Polson, the store manager. But Jackson knew this wasn't the end of the trail. It was just the beginning. His phone buzzed again. Dana, his VP of Field Operations, had sent another update. "We flagged 4 more stores with the same invoice pattern, same fake vendor routing. All of them report to Polson in some form. She's not just a participant, Jackson. She's the hub." Jackson stared at the screen, his mind racing. 4 more stores, Altoona, Bethlehem, and 2 on the outskirts of Pittsburgh Hall, showing perfect profit metrics, all using Liberty Orchard as a silent supplier. This wasn't a rogue decision by one manager. It was organized, coordinated, and profitable. Karen hadn't just swapped the filling, she'd swapped the system, and now Jackson had to cut it open, slice by slice. "I'm not stopping at Scranton," he told Dana over the phone, his voice steady but laced with resolve. "I'm going to visit every one of these stores myself, undercover. If this is as big as it looks, I need to see it with my own eyes." "Jackson, that's risky," Dana cautioned. "If Karen's the hub, she's likely already tipped off others. They might be covering their tracks as we speak. Let me send a corporate team." "No," Jackson cut in. "Corporate teams get stonewalled with paperwork and excuses. I've built this company on trust in our product, trust in our people. If that trust is broken, I need to feel it, taste it, see it myself. Arrange the itinerary. I start tomorrow." The next morning, before the sun had broken over the skyline, Jackson stepped out of the Starlight Inn, now dressed in the nondescript uniform of a corporate field auditor. Khaki slacks, a navy-collared shirt, a clipboard tucked under his arm, and a freshly laminated badge clipped to his chest that read Quality Assurance Golden Hearth Regional. A pair of glasses he didn't need completed the disguise. With Dana's help, he'd been inserted into each store's schedule as Mr. Jameson, an unannounced internal inspector doing spot checks on cleanliness, storage, and food quality. His real goal wasn't to catch crumbs in corners. It was to find what lay beneath the crust and who was helping hide it. His first stop was the Altoona location, a smaller franchise tucked into a strip mall on the edge of town. The moment he walked in, the similarities to Scranton were eerie. The same hollow energy, the same lack of care fingerprints on the display case, staff moving mechanically, and a cashier who barely looked up as she handed him a slice of apple pie. Jackson didn't even need to taste it to know something was wrong. The smell was off, that same artificial sweetness masking a deeper lie. He sat in a corner booth, cut into the pie, and saw the familiar glossy goop slump out. No real apples, no texture, just a fraud in a crust. He pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of the filling, then checked under the plate. Sure enough, a small label read, Liberty Orchard Imports Batch LO3821, the same code as in Scranton. Jackson's stomach churned, not from the pie, but from the realization that this was systematic. He approached the counter, keeping his tone casual. "Mind if I take a look at your storage area?" "Standard QA protocol." The young employee, whose name tag read Mike, hesitated. I'll need to check with the manager. She's pretty strict about who goes back there." "That's fine," Jackson replied with a polite smile. "I'll wait." Minutes later, the manager emerged, a wiry man in his late 30s, named Greg Tanner, according to his file. His handshake was firm, but his eyes darted nervously. "Mr. Jameson, right? We weren't expecting a QA check today." "Unannounced visits are part of the process," Jackson said smoothly. "Just need to verify a few things. Shouldn't take long." Greg led him to the back, but Jackson noticed how he hovered, watching every move. In the walk-in freezer, Jackson found crates labeled with the same Liberty Orchard code, tucked behind boxes of legitimate Golden Hearth supplies as if to hide them. He took discreet photos, then asked, "Who handles your supplier orders?" "That'd be me," Greg said, a little too quickly, "but we get directives from regional oversight. Karen Polson in Scranton, she's kind of the point person for our cluster." Jackson nodded, jotting it down. "And these crates from Liberty Orchard, they're approved?" Greg's face twitched just for a split second. Yeah, they're a temporary substitute. Supply chain issues, you know. Karen signed off on it." "I see," Jackson said, keeping his expression neutral, but inside, his blood was boiling. Karen wasn't just orchestrating Scranton, she was the linchpin for an entire network of deceit. Over the next 2 days, Jackson visited the other flagged locations, Bethlehem, and the 2 Pittsburgh stores. Each one told the same story. Fake pie filling, Liberty Orchard labels hidden in plain sight, and managers who deflected blame to regional oversight or directly to Karen Polson. But in Bethlehem, something new emerged. While inspecting the back office under the guise of checking digital invoices, Jackson noticed a locked filing cabinet with a handwritten label, Vendor Alt. With the manager momentarily distracted by a delivery, Jackson used a small lockpick tool he'd brought just in case and opened it. Inside were 2 sets of books, one for corporate, showing orders from approved suppliers, and a hidden set detailing payments to Liberty Orchard, all signed by Karen Polson and countersigned by someone named C. Polson, her brother, Charles. His phone vibrated. Donna's voice came through a hidden earpiece. "You're in?" Scranton's records were duplicated too. "That vendor alt file tree matches what we found. Liberty Orchard made at least 18 deliveries to each of these stores in the last 90 days, all undocumented by our system." "They're keeping 2 sets of books," Jackson whispered back, snapping photos of the documents. "One for headquarters, one for themselves. This isn't just fraud, it's a shadow operation." "Jackson, there's more," Dana said, her tone urgent. "We traced the bank accounts tied to Liberty Orchard. Payments aren't just coming from these 5 stores. There's activity linked to at least 8 other locations across 3 states. And get this, some of the transfers are routed through an offshore account. This goes higher than Karen." Jackson's heart raced. "Higher? Who?" "We're still digging, but the offshore account is tied to a shell company called Haven Logistics. No public records, but the registration address matches a P.O. box used by a former Golden Hearth executive, someone who left under questionable circumstances 2 years ago." Jackson clenched his jaw. He remembered the name Victor Langston, a regional director who'd been forced out after allegations of skimming profits. Jackson had thought that chapter was closed. Could Victor be the mastermind behind this, using Karen as a front? Or was there someone even bigger pulling the strings? As he locked the cabinet and slipped back to the front of the store, a new challenge emerged. The manager in Bethlehem, a stern woman named Linda Hayes, had returned and was eyeing him suspiciously. "Mr. Jameson, I just got a call from Karen Polson. She said there's no record of a QA visit scheduled for today. Can I see your corporate ID again?" Jackson's pulse quickened, but he kept his cool. "Of course," he said, handing over the fake badge Dana had prepared. "Unannounced visits are standard for regional audits. You can call headquarters to verify." Linda's eyes narrowed. "I think I will. Stay here." She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. Jackson knew he had minutes, maybe less, before his cover was blown. He texted Donna, "Cover thinning, need extraction plan." Her reply was immediate. "I've got a team en route. Stall for 10 minutes. Exit through the back if needed." Jackson glanced around. Employees were starting to whisper, casting glances his way. He approached a young worker near the prep line, a nervous kid named Ethan. "Hey, quick question. How long have you worked here?" 6 months, Ethan stammered, avoiding eye contact. "And have you noticed any changes in ingredients since then?" Ethan hesitated, his fingers tightening on a mixing spoon. "I'm not supposed to talk about that. Ms. Hayes says we keep things in-house." Jackson lowered his voice. "Anything you tell me stays between us. I'm just trying to make sure everything's safe." Ethan glanced toward the office, then whispered, "The filling, it's not the same. I used to work at another location and it tasted different, real. This stuff, it's weird. And last month, a guy got sick after eating here. Ms. Hayes told us not to say anything, said it was just a fluke, but I heard her on the phone with someone saying they needed to move the product faster before more complaints." Jackson's blood ran cold. A customer getting sick wasn't just a red flag, it was a neon sign. "Thank you, Ethan," he said quietly. "You did the right thing." Just then, Linda emerged from the office, her face hard. "Mr. Jameson, I've spoken with Karen. She's on her way here now, and she insists there's no audit scheduled. I'm going to have to ask you to leave until we sort this out." Jackson forced a smile. "Understood. He'll wait outside for clarification from headquarters." He turned toward the back exit, his heart pounding. As he stepped into the alley behind the store, he heard tires screech nearby. A black SUV pulled up Dana's team. He climbed in, and they sped off just as Linda appeared at the back door, phone in hand, likely calling Karen. Inside the SUV, Dana handed him a tablet. "We've got a problem. Karen's not just covering her track, she's mobilizing. We intercepted a call. She's instructing managers at all flagged locations to destroy records and move inventory tonight. And there's chatter about a meeting with someone named Victor. Sound familiar?" Jackson's eyes darkened. "Victor Langston. I thought we were done with him. If he's behind this, he's not just after profits, after revenge. He blamed me for his exit from Golden Hearth. This could be personal." Dana nodded. "We've got a narrow window. If they're destroying evidence, we need to act fast. I've got legal and security teams ready to lock down the stores, but we need hard proof tying Victor to Liberty Orchard. Without it, he walks." Jackson stared out the window as the SUV sped through the darkening streets. "Then we get it. I'm not letting this go until every last lie is exposed. Set up surveillance on Karen's meeting and get me into one more store before they shred everything. If Victor's involved, I want to catch him red-handed." The stakes had never been higher. This wasn't just about fake pie anymore. It was about a conspiracy that threatened to topple everything Jackson had built. And as the night closed in, he knew the next slice of truth would be the hardest to swallow. If you're wondering how far someone would go to protect a lie or destroy a legacy, comment below with your thoughts. Have you ever uncovered a betrayal that went deeper than you expected? We'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to subscribe, there's more to come, and it's only getting messier. Last time, Jackson Hart, the undercover CEO of Golden Hearth Bakery, uncovered a web of fraud spanning multiple stores, all tied to manager Karen Polson and a mysterious supplier, Liberty Orchard. But the deeper he dug, the darker it got hints of a former executive, Victor Langston, seeking revenge and whispers of destroyed evidence. Now Jackson's on the hunt for a secret meeting that could blow this scandal wide open. Stick around because the danger is rising and the truth is more bitter than any pie. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 3, catch up now and don't forget to like and subscribe for the full story. Jackson Hart sat in the back of the black SUV as it idled in a dimly lit parking lot on the outskirts of Altoona, Pennsylvania. The night air was thick with tension, the kind that clung to your skin like damp fog. His phone screen glowed faintly, displaying a grainy live feed from a hidden camera Donna's security team had planted near a nondescript warehouse, one of the suspected meeting points where Karen Polson was rumored to be coordinating with others involved in the Liberty Orchard fraud. Dana, sitting beside him, adjusted her headset, her voice low and urgent. "We've got movement. A white van just pulled in, no plates visible. Matches the description of the delivery vehicles Ethan mentioned." Jackson's jaw tightened. Ethan, the nervous young employee from the Bethlehem store, had tipped him off about unmarked vans delivering fake ingredients under the cover of early mornings. Now, seeing one here at a location tied to Karen's intercepted calls confirmed his worst fears. This wasn't just a small-scale scam, it was a full-blown operation. And if Donna's intel was right, Karen was meeting someone tonight. Possibly Victor Langston, the disgraced former Golden Hearth executive who might be the mastermind behind it all. Victor had left the company 2 years ago under a cloud of suspicion for skimming profits, blaming Jackson for his downfall. If he was involved, this wasn't just about money, it was personal. "Zoom in on the driver," Jackson said, leaning closer to the screen. The grainy footage showed a man stepping out of the van, his face obscured by a baseball cap. He carried a small duffel bag and moved with a hurried, cautious gait toward the warehouse's side entrance. Moments later, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows, Karen Polson. Even in the low-quality feed, Jackson recognized her poised posture, the maroon Golden Hearth cardigan she wore like a shield. She greeted the man with a quick nod, and they disappeared inside. "We need audio," Jackson said, his voice clipped. "Can we get closer?" Dana shook her head. "Too risky. The perimeter's got motion sensors. We picked them up on the initial sweep, but the mic on the camera might catch something if they step near the window. I've got our tech guy enhancing the feed now." Jackson's fingers drummed against the armrest, impatience warring with caution. Every second they waited was a second Karen and her accomplice could be destroying evidence or planning their next move. Donna's earlier report echoed in his mind. Karen had instructed managers at the flagged locations to shred records and move inventory under the cover of night. If they lost this chance to catch her in the act, the trail could go cold. A crackle came through Donna's headset, followed by faint, distorted voices. "Got something," she whispered, adjusting the volume. The audio was patchy, but Jackson could make out Karen's voice, sharp and tense. "Need to move faster. Hart's onto us." That QA guy in Bethlehem wasn't who he said he was. A deeper voicemail, unfamiliar, replied, "You're sure it was him? How'd he even get in without us knowing?" "I don't know," Karen snapped. "But Linda said he was asking about Liberty Orchard. He had access to the back office. If he's digging, we're exposed. We need to clear out the Altoona stock by tomorrow night and reroute the next shipment through Haven Logistics." Jackson's blood ran cold. Haven Logistics, the shell company Dana had traced to an offshore account, linked to a P.O. box once used by Victor Langston. This was the confirmation they needed. Karen wasn't acting alone. She was part of a larger network, and Haven Logistics was the key to unmasking the bigger players. The male voice spoke again, colder this time. "Victor's not happy. He says if Hart gets any closer, we cut ties and burn everything. No loose ends. You understand what that means?" There was a pause, then Karen's voice, quieter, almost hesitant. "I understand, but the staff, some of them, are asking questions. If they talk, they won't," the man interrupted. "Handle it like you did with Carlos. Silence costs less than exposure." Jackson's stomach churned. Carlos, the former assistant manager from Scranton, who tried to raise concerns, only to have his hours cut until he quit. Or, as Tasha, another employee, had hinted, possibly worse. The implication in the man's tone was clear. Anyone who threatened the operation would be dealt with, one way or another. This wasn't just fraud anymore. It was intimidation, maybe even something darker. "Dana," Jackson said, his voice low but firm, "we can't wait. We need to get inside that warehouse. If they're planning to burn everything, we lose our evidence. Call in the backup team now." "Jackson, it's too dangerous," Dana countered. "We don't know who else is in there or what they're capable of. Let legal lock down the stores. First, secure the paper trail we already have." "No," Jackson insisted, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Paper trails can be forged or destroyed. We need hard proof inventory, recordings, faces. If Victor's name is on this, I want him caught in the act. I'm not letting him slip away again." Dana hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but you stay in the vehicle. My team goes in. Agreed?" Jackson didn't answer. His mind was already racing ahead, picturing the crates of fake filling, the falsified invoices, the faces of customers who trusted his brand only to be fed lies. He couldn't sit back. Not now, not when the stakes were this high. Minutes later, Donna's Security Team 3 operatives, dressed in black, equipped with body cams and earpieces, approached the warehouse under the cover of darkness. Jackson watched their progress on a split-screen feed, his heart pounding. The team breached the side entrance silently, moving with military precision. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of stacked crates and industrial shelving, dimly lit by flickering overhead lights. The body cam footage showed labels on the crates. Liberty Orchard Imports Batch LO3821, the same code Jackson had seen in Scranton and Bethlehem. But there was something else. Mauler boxes marked Haven Logistics Restricted. One operative zoomed in, revealing a sub-label, preservative compound, non-FDA compliant. They're stockpiling more than just pie filling, Jackson muttered, his voice tight. That's raw material for something worse. We need samples. Before Dana could relay the order, a shout crackled through the feed. Freeze! Hands where I can see them! One of the operatives had rounded a corner and come face to face with the man from the van, now holding a crowbar, his cap pulled low. Karen was nowhere in sight. The man lunged, swinging the crowbar, and chaos erupted. The body cam shook as the operative dodged, grappling with the man while the other two rushed to assist. Gunshots rang out, not from the team, but from somewhere deeper in the warehouse. Ambush! One operative yelled through the comms. We've got hostiles, maybe 3, requesting immediate extraction. Jackson's heart stopped. Dana, get them out now. I'm on it, she barked, radioing for the extraction vehicle. But the feed showed the situation deteriorating fast. One operative was down, clutching his leg, while the others returned fire, taking cover behind crates. The man with the crowbar had fled into the shadows, and Karen's voice, panicked, now could be heard shouting, Get the drives, leave the rest. Drives, Jackson repeated, his mind racing. They've got digital records, maybe the full network. Dana, tell them to prioritize securing any tech. We can't lose that. But the operation was spiraling out of control. The extraction vehicle arrived just as the warehouse's rear door burst open, and 2 figures, Karen and the man, sprinted toward a waiting car. The operatives couldn't pursue. They were pinned down, dragging their injured teammate to safety. The car sped off into the night, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a warehouse now eerily silent. Back in the SUV, Jackson slammed his fist against the seat. We were so close. They've got the drives. Whatever's on them could be the key to Victor, to everything. Donna's face was grim. We've got something. One of the operatives grabbed a hard drive from a desk before the firefight started. Tech's decrypting it now, and we've got samples from the crates enough to prove non-compliance and tie it to Liberty Orchard. But Jackson, we lost visual on Karen. And that gunfire, it wasn't just a warning. Whoever's behind this is willing to kill to protect it. Jackson stared out the window, the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't the Golden Hearth he'd built, a place of warmth, trust, and family recipes. It had become a battleground tainted by greed and betrayal, and now lives were at stake. He thought of Tasha, the young assistant manager in Scranton, who'd looked at him with quiet hope, trusting him to make things right. He thought of Ethan, risking his job to whisper about a sick customer. He couldn't let them down. Dinah, he said finally, his voice steady despite the storm inside. I want every store on lockdown by morning. No more games. We use the evidence we have to freeze operations at every flagged location, and I want a trace on that car. Karen's not disappearing on us. As for Victor, if he's out there, I'll find him myself. Jackson, you're not a detective, Donna warned. Let the authorities handle this now. You've done enough. But Jackson shook his head. This isn't just business. It's personal. Victor blamed me for losing everything. If he's using Karen to tear down Golden Hearth, he's tearing down my mother's legacy. I won't stop until I look him in the eye and end this. As the SUV drove through the night, Jackson's phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. The text was short, chilling. You're digging in the wrong place, Hart. Back off, or you'll lose more than a recipe. His blood ran cold. Someone knew he was too close. Was it Victor, Karen, or someone even higher up the chain? He showed the message to Dana, whose expression darkened. We're not just dealing with fraud anymore, she said quietly. This is a threat. You need protection. I don't need protection, Jackson replied, his voice hard. I need answers, and I'm going to get them, no matter what it takes. The night stretched on, but sleep was the last thing on Jackson's mind. The pie had cracked open a scandal, but the crust of lies was thicker than he'd ever imagined. And as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, he knew the next move could be his last. If you've ever faced a threat that made you question everything, comment below. How did you keep going? We'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to subscribe, there's more to come, and the final slice of truth is the hardest to swallow. Last time, Jackson Hart, the undercover CEO of Golden Hearth Bakery, risked everything to uncover a deadly fraud tied to fake pie fillings and a network of lies. A secret meeting went south, gunfire erupted, and a chilling threat landed on his phone. Back off or you'll lose more than a recipe. Now Jackson's ready to face the man who might be behind it, all a ghost from his past with a score to settle. Stick around for the final slice of this story, because the truth is about to cut deeper than ever. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 4, catch up now, and don't forget to like and subscribe for the epic conclusion. Jackson Hart sat in a dimly lit diner on the edge of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a cup of untouched black coffee cooling in front of him. The neon sign outside flickered, casting jagged shadows across the worn linoleum floor. It was 4:37 a.m., less than 24 hours since the botched warehouse raid that had nearly cost his security team their lives. The hard drive they'd recovered was still being decrypted by Dana's tech specialist, but the chilling text message from an unknown number, "You're digging in the wrong place, Hart. Back off or you'll lose more than a recipe," burned in his mind. Someone knew he was close, and they weren't just warning him, they were promising consequences. Dana slid into the booth across from him, her face etched with exhaustion, but her eyes sharp. "We've got a lead on the car Karen fled in from the warehouse. It was spotted near an abandoned industrial lot outside McKeesport, registered to a dummy corporation tied to Haven Logistics. And the decrypted data from the hard drive, it's incomplete, but there's enough to confirm payments from Liberty Orchard to an account linked to Victor Langston. He's in this, Jackson. Deep." Jackson's grip tightened on the coffee mug, though he didn't drink. Victor Langston, the name alone stirred a bitter taste. 2 years ago, as regional director, Victor had been caught skimming profits from franchise fees, funneling money into personal accounts. Jackson had personally overseen his termination, ensuring he left with nothing but a tarnished reputation. Victor had sworn revenge, spitting venom as security escorted him out. "You'll regret this, Hart. It'll burn your little pie empire to the ground." At the time, Jackson had dismissed it as empty rage. Now those words felt like prophecy. "I want to be there when we find him," Jackson said, his voice low but resolute. "If Victor's behind this, I need to look him in the eye. I need to know why." Dana frowned. "Jackson, this isn't just personal anymore. It's dangerous. The gunfire at the warehouse wasn't random. Those were hired hands. And that text? It's not a bluff. Let the authorities take it from here. We've got enough to press charges: fraud, endangerment, falsified records." "No," Jackson cut in, his tone final. "Authorities move slow. Victor will disappear long before they build a case. I've spent 20 years building Golden Hearth on trust in our food, our people, our name. If he's tearing that down, I'm the one who ends it. Set up the operation. We move tonight." Hours later, as dusk settled over McKeesport, Jackson crouched behind a rusted shipping container in the industrial lot Dana had flagged. The air smelled of oil and decay, the silence broken only by the distant hum of a highway. Donna's security team, now reinforced with 2 ex-military contractors, flanked him, their body cams recording every move. Ahead, a dilapidated warehouse loomed, its windows boarded up, but faint light leaked through the cracks. The white van from the previous night was parked near a loading dock, alongside a black sedan with tinted windows. Karen's car. Thermal scan shows 3 heat signatures inside. One of the contractors whispered through the comms. 2 near the center, 1 pacing by the east wall. No visible weapons, but assume they're armed after last night. Jackson nodded, his heart pounding but his focus razor sharp. Dana, monitoring from a safe distance in the command van, relayed intel. "We've got a partial match on the sedan's plates registered to a rental agency, paid for with a card tied to Haven Logistics. If Victor's here, this is your shot. But Jackson, stick to the plan. Observe, record, extract. No heroics. He didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the warehouse door, where a figure had just stepped out. Karen Polson, her face pale under the sodium streetlight, clutching a phone to her ear. She looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting trouble. Then another figure emerged, a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his face half hidden by shadow. But Jackson knew that gait, that arrogant tilt of the head. Victor Langston. Got visual confirmation, Jackson whispered into his mic. It's him. Move in on my signal. The team crept closer, using the cover of abandoned machinery and stacked pallets. Through a cracked window, Jackson saw Victor and Karen arguing, their voices muffled but their gestures heated. A laptop sat open on a folding table alongside a stack of external drives, likely the ones Karen had grabbed during the warehouse escape. Victor slammed a fist on the table, and even from a distance, Jackson caught fragments of his words. Hart's done. We liquidate everything tonight. No traces. Karen shook her head, her voice rising. It's too late. He's already got samples. If we run now, you don't run, Victor snapped, stepping closer to her. You clean up, or I will. Jackson's blood boiled. Clean up, the same phrase from the intercepted audio code for silencing anyone who knew too much. He couldn't wait any longer. Now he hissed into the comms. The team surged forward, breaching the side entrance with practiced precision. Flashlights cut through the dim interior as they shouted, "Hands up! Don't move!" Karen froze, her phone clattering to the ground. But Victor reacted faster, grabbing one of the drives and bolting toward a back exit. Jackson, ignoring Dana's protests in his earpiece, gave chase. He wasn't letting Victor slip away, not again. The warehouse was a labyrinth of rusted shelves and debris, but Jackson's adrenaline pushed him forward, dodging obstacles as he closed the gap. Victor stumbled over a loose pipe, giving Jackson just enough time to tackle him to the ground. "Enough, Victor," Jackson growled, pinning him down as the man struggled. "It's over. You're done." Victor laughed, a bitter, jagged sound, even as he gasped for breath. "Over? You think this ends with me? You're a fool, Hart. I'm just the middleman. You've got no idea who's really pulling the strings." Jackson's grip tightened. "Who? Tell me, or I swear you'll what?" Victor sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "Ruin me? You already did that. But I rebuilt. And the person bankrolling this, they've got deeper pockets than you'll ever touch. They wanted Golden Hearth, gutted your legacy, turned to ash. I was just happy to help." Before Jackson could press further, the security team caught up, cuffing Victor with zip ties. Karen, now detained near the table, stared at the ground, her defiance replaced by resignation. The laptop and drives were secured, but Victor's words lingered like a poison. A bigger player, someone with the power to orchestrate this from the shadows? Jackson's mind raced. Could it be a competitor, a corporate raider, or someone even closer to home? Back at the command van, Dana pored over the recovered data, while local authorities took Victor and Karen into custody. "The drives confirm everything," she said, her voice grim. Payments, shipments, even internal memos between Victor and Karen detailing how to falsify records. They've been at this for over a year. Victor leveraged his old contacts to set up Liberty Orchard, and Karen ran point on distribution. But there's a third set of encrypted communications labeled sponsor. We can't crack it yet, but it matches what Victor said. Someone else is involved. Jackson rubbed his temples, exhaustion and anger warring within him. "And the threat on my phone?" "Burner number untraceable for now," Dana replied. "But with Victor in custody, we've got leverage. Hell talk eventually, especially if it means a lighter sentence." Jackson nodded, but the victory felt hollow. He'd caught Victor, exposed Karen, and secured enough evidence to shut down the fraudulent stores. But the shadow of this sponsor loomed larger than ever, and the damage was already done. Hundreds, maybe thousands of customers had been fed toxic imitations of his mother's recipe. The trust had spent decades building had been cracked open like a brittle pie crust. Over the next week, Golden Hearth issued a public recall, admitting to isolated supply chain irregularities at select locations. Jackson insisted on full transparency, recording a personal video apology that went viral. "We failed you," he said, looking directly into the camera, his voice raw. "I failed you. My mother's recipe was more than food, it was a promise. We're rebuilding that promise starting today. Every store will be audited, every ingredient verified, and I'm stepping back from the CEO role temporarily to oversee this myself. You deserve better, and I'll make sure you get it." The response was mixed. Some customers expressed outrage, others offered support, moved by his accountability. But for Jackson, it wasn't enough. Late one night, he visited the original Golden Hearth location in his hometown, a small diner where it all began. He stood in the kitchen, rolling out dough with his own hands, just as his mother had taught him. The smell of cinnamon and apples filled the air, a reminder of why he'd fought so hard. "Dana," he said over the phone, "keep digging into that sponsor. I'm not done until I know who wanted to destroy us and why. And I'm setting up a fund for any customer affected by this: medical bills, compensation, anything they need. Golden Hearth isn't just a brand, it's family, and family doesn't let family down." As Jackson Hart's story comes to a close, we're left with a truth as bitter and sweet as the pie that started it all. He uncovered a fraud that threatened his legacy, faced betrayal from those he trusted, and stared down a past that refused to stay buried. But even as he caught Victor Langston and exposed Karen Polson, a shadow remains, a mysterious sponsor who might still be out there plotting the next move. Jackson's fight isn't over, but his resolve is unbreakable. He rebuilt trust by owning his mistakes, by rolling up his sleeves and starting from scratch, just like his mother did all those years ago. So what can we learn from this? First, trust is fragile, whether it's in a brand, a person, or a promise. It takes years to build and seconds to shatter, but it can be mended with honesty and action. Second, betrayal often hides in plain sight. Jackson didn't see it coming because it came from within, from people he thought he knew. Keep your eyes open, even to those closest to you. And finally, when everything falls apart, go back to your roots. Jackson found strength in his mother's kitchen, in the values she instilled. What's your foundation? What keeps you grounded when the world cracks open? If Jackson's journey hit home for you, comment below. Have you ever had to rebuild trust after a betrayal? How did you do it? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this, where the truth cuts deep, but the fight for what's right cuts deeper. Until next time, keep slicing through the lies. And remember, a good pie and a good life stands on its own.